Okay, last week we were learning about B'dikas Chametz, where you have to do B'dikas Chametz. Before the time of B'dikas Chametz comes, you're not allowed to learn, you're not allowed to eat a meal, you can take a snack, and generally speaking, B'dikas Chametz is supposed to be done as soon as possible. Because in fact, from the halacha comes out, because the Mishnah uses the expression or l'arba asar, so ksheyesh ksas adayim erayim, when there's a little bit of light. So therefore, if somebody, let's say, always davens ma'ariv at home, you have to do b'dikas chametz before you daven ma'ariv. If you're in a shul, or you always daven ma'ariv in a shul, so then we're afraid if you do b'dikas chametz first, you're going to forget to daven ma'ariv. So therefore, if you're with a tzibor, the shul davens mincha ma'ariv like regular, and then people go home and right away do b'dikas chametz. But before b'dikas chametz, you're not allowed to learn, you're not allowed to do work, you're not allowed to eat the meal. You have to right away get ready for b'dikas chametz. There's a custom also to put out 10 pieces of bread. Now, what's the purpose of this putting out 10 pieces of bread? So it's basically minig Yisrael Teirahi, even though really halachically there's no need to do it. There are poskim that want to say that nowadays if the house is super clean, you have to put out bread, otherwise you won't have what to burn. But Alter Rebbe doesn't hold like that. And the bottom line is, halachically, the mitzvah of searching for the chametz is to search for chametz. You don't have to find anything. If a person does b'dikas chametz properly and they don't find anything, they still did the bracha. They still did the mitzvah. Because the mitzvah is to b'dikas chametz, not to find chametz. But one of the reasons we put out the 10 pieces of bread is because then you'll have what to burn, and then you'll get a mitzvah of tashbisu, of destroying and burning the chametz. Now the bracha that you say at the time of b'dikas chametz is al bir chametz. The bracha is not al b'dikas chametz. The bracha should be Ashik Mitzvah Sivan. No, al b'dikas chametz. It's one of the 7 rabbinic mitzvahs. The reason we say al bir chametz is the purpose of the b'dika is to burn the chametz you find. So the b'dika is only a purpose to get to the ultimate goal of burning the chametz. So therefore the bracha is al bir chametz. Okay, but there's another issue of putting out 10 pieces of bread. Why up is 10 pieces of bread, not 5? If the reason is to find chametz, put out 5 pieces of bread. So this is more a pi Kabbalah, because it's interesting in the Gemara in Pesachim, when the Gemara speaks about you put out 10 pieces of bread and you find 9. Or you put out 10 pieces of bread and you find 11. So the base number that the Gemara always uses is the number 10. Why does the Gemara use the number of 10? Because chametz represents, in a spiritual sense, the evil within the person. We say the hiratza when you burn the chametz, just like we burn the chametz in the house, you should burn the internal chametz. Chametz represents evil, the source of all sin is chametz. So there's 10 levels of the soul, 10 levels of the neshama. And that b'dikas chametz is an internal investigation, checking for the chametz in all 10 levels of the soul. So you put out 10 pieces of bread corresponding with the 10 levels of the neshama. That's where you put out 10 pieces of bread. Now, there's also a minig that you take, if you ever notice, the b'dikas chametz kids have like this. They have a candle, they have a feather, and they have a wooden spoon. Okay? Now, what's the purpose of each one? The candle obviously is to search. The feather, really, it says all the Kabbalistic things. The purpose of the feather is that you should, in case you find chametz, they didn't have brooms in those days, so the feather would be like a broom to gather the chametz. That's what it says. You gather the chametz. What's the purpose of the spoon? That's questionable. What the purpose of the spoon? Some poskim write the purpose, because if you notice how impractical it is to put with the feather onto a spoon, you're never going to get it on. It's not going to work. So you say, what's the purpose of the spoon? Number one, they should remember to burn the chametz. Number one, it's a reminder. And our minhag is that after you have finished the bedikas chametz, all the chametz you find, you put it in a bag with the feather and the candle, and you put it in a bag, and you put the stick, the handle of the spoon up out of the bag. You put it into a paper bag and you tie it, and now you have the bag with the 10 pieces of chametz or any other chametz you found, and you have the handle, and that's part of the burning. Brought down in other svarim the expression you should burn the chametz with wood. And that's basically the reason why there's a spoon, even though it's extremely impractical. But that's more Kabbalistic than practical. Now the reason, you have to use a single wicked candle. Why do you use that? By the way, let me just tell you one thing about the 10 pieces of bread before we go further. Each piece should be less than a kazayas. Don't put out big pieces of bread. Number one, put them in a napkin, not in aluminum foil, because aluminum foil doesn't burn. So you put them in a napkin, and you make sure there's no crumbs, that, each piece should be less than a kazayas. Altogether, the 10 pieces should have a kazayas. What's the reason why each piece should have less and all 10 together should have a kazayas? Because the din is, like the Gemara discusses, if you put out 10 and you find 9, and it's a big piece, bigger than the kazayas, you'll have to keep looking until you find it. If it's less than a kazayas, then you can rely on bittul. Because for bittul helps for less than a kazayas, because it's not valuable. If it's more than a kazayas, bittul is not going to help necessarily. You're going to have to look for the chametz. Therefore, generally, when you put out the pens, I get this every year. You have no idea. B'dikas chametz night. I get a lot of calls. I put out, I can't find all 10 pieces, and I'm not sure if I put out 10. It starts. I'm not sure if I put out 10, but I only found 9, and what should I do? Number one, you don't give the 10 pieces of bread to the kids to hide, because then you're going to have a problem finding it. You put them out yourself in different places, and some people even write down. It's brought down a lot. Some people practically just write down where they put them, that they should know where they actually put the 10 pieces of bread. Otherwise, you have a problem. But if you have each piece is less than a kazayas, then you don't have to go crazy. But then altogether it should have a kazayas, because then you're mekayim minatayra the mitzvah tashbisu. Because the mitzvah burning chametz is really what's not bittul. And bittul, if it's a kazayas already, it's choshuv. So therefore, it should all be together a kazayas, that you should get the mitzvah of burning chametz, and but each piece should be less than a kazayas. What?
Two questions. So if we have some food that it's chametzik, that is left over till the morning, till 10:30 or 10 whatever that we can eat. We're searching for chametz, but we know that there is this little bit of chametz in this refrigerator in the garage.
That you're planning to eat.
That we're planning to eat.
So it says in halacha, the chametz that you're planning to eat for the next day, right? You should put away in a safe place. It could be in a refrigerator. You should put it away in a safe place that nobody can get it. Because if you did bedikas chametz, and then the food that you put away to eat tomorrow all of a sudden disappears, either by a mouse or two-legged kids, then you're going to have to do bedikas chametz all over again. One sec. What?
Second question, if the 10 sefirot is why we put out the 10 pieces, isn't it like Hanukkah that each person who's 13 and older maybe should also do 10 pieces? Is the chiyuv on the house?
The chiyuv is on the house, not on the individuals. A father can make his kids over bar mitzvah shluchim to help him in the bedika. Or generally you can make a person a shliach to do bedikas chametz. It says you shouldn't have women and kids doing it, but you can have adults over bar mitzvah doing bedikas chametz, but that could be a shlich. What?
Until Shabbat day, what time can you have?
Okay, one sec. We're learning bedikas chametz. Why are you asking me that? What?
Once you make the bracha of bittul chametz and then you tashbisu and all that, and then it's before the zman and you start eating chametz, don't you think it's like a little...
Okay, so when we're coming to that, this year's a whole different story.
I'm just saying, generally speaking, if you're making money,
Generally speaking, the chametz that you're planning the chametz that you're eating the next day, and including the 10 pieces of bread, you have to put away in a safe place. Okay, so you put that away. And when you bit your mevatel chametz, you're saying your mevatel chametz that you know about. This you don't want to be mevatel, that you're not doing bittul chametz for. That's not an issue. You're not doing bittul chametz on it.
You're burning the chametz and then you're eating chametz after.
No, after you burn the chametz, you shouldn't eat chametz now. The Gemara doesn't say putting out pieces at all. Because Al Rebbe says, Bais Din, you don't have to, meaning Yisrael Teirehi. That's what he says. Yeah, but why 10?
But when you said the Gemara says something about 10.
No, the Gemara says, B'chlal, if you had 10 pieces of bread, and they're not for B'digas Chametz, and then the mouse came, and then there's a white mouse and a black mouse, and the white mouse transferred it to the black mouse. Is it the same mouse? Is it the same bread? But the Gemara's number is always 10. So therefore, because it corresponds with the 10 spheres and the 10 levels of chametz. Okay, now you can. Why the reason you need to have a single wicked candle? And the Gemara says 2 reasons. If you have a torch, like Abdullah candle, which is multi-wicked, you're afraid to go into the corners because you're afraid of a fire. That's number one. Secondly, the Gemara says, and Shulchan Aruch brings this down, when you have a single wicked candle, the light is in front of the candle. The light it sheds is in front of the candle. If it's a torch, it's on this side of the candle. So if you want to, scientifically, so if you want to look for chametz in the corner, you can't have the light come the other way, you need to look in the corner. But people have to be extremely careful, okay? When you go to the corners, the drapes and under the bedding and all that, it's really a big problem using a candle. Because God forbid you can burn down the house. According to halacha today, there is an inyan of a candle, Ner Hashem Nishma Sodom. The Gemara learns out that a bedika has to be with the candle. There's a lot of psukim the Gemara quotes. But today, practically speaking, you can use a flashlight. Obviously, there's an inyan of using a candle a little bit. But any place, under beds, next to the drapes and curtains and all that, you should definitely use a flashlight. And a flashlight, practically speaking, is better than a candle. You could see much better with a flashlight than you could with a candle. But again, there's a spiritual inyan of using a candle. So when the person makes the bracha, let's say the father, the head of the household, is starting the bedika. So he put out the 10 pieces of bread, and he should gather the family together. It says in halacha, he makes the bracha, and I'll be a chametz. You're not allowed to talk between the bracha and the beginning of the bedika. But you have to begin doing the bedika right away in the place where you're making the bracha, and then if you have different people helping you, you can branch out into different places for them to do bedikas chametz.
If a woman is alone,
she has to do bedikas chametz because she has no choice. But listen, the Alter Rebbe had one tiny room, and he did bedikas chametz. Took him a whole night. There were tzaddikim that he tells stories of very little houses, and they did bedikas chametz a whole night because it was internal bedikas chametz. It wasn't stam. They could have, like we said always, they could build the house in that night in an hour, and it took him 10 hours to do bedikas chametz. One. You could light the candle. You should start looking a little bit. There's an inyan. Yeah, and then do a flashlight. Yeah, listen, a flashlight is much better. There's a concept. You start a little bit with the candle, and then you burn the candle afterwards. But in fact, it's brought out. Some people like doing bedikas chametz with the lights on. Some people like doing bedikas chametz with the lights off. Whatever is practical to do. So whatever is easier. For you, it's better with the lights on, lights off. It doesn't really matter. But you have to do bedikas chametz. Now, if you're going from, let's say, you have a few places to do bedikas chametz, so then you can make one bracha, and going from place to place is not a hefsek. Ideally, you shouldn't talk until bedikas chametz is over. But b'di'eved, and that's the minute you could talk. In fact, they discuss in halacha what happens in the middle of bedikas chametz, the phone rings. So you're allowed to answer the phone. So once you start a B'dikas Chametz, you could. The best thing is to say a middle B'dikas Chametz. But halacha brings out what happens if it's a Rav and his phone rings and he's answering the phone, so he's allowed to paskin a shayla middle B'dikas Chametz. Or Rabbanim just take the phone off the hook until after B'dikas Chametz. Then they can do B'dika. So that's what.
There's a minute that if you're going to kind of do, if you have a larger house, whatever,
Right.
you're going to want to do a more comprehensive search days before, so that you're not do a search with a candle.
We mentioned that. I'm going to say it again because it's really relevant. The only time you can make a bracha on B'dikas Chametz is the night of B'dikas Chametz, which this year is Thursday night, which is a night early. But Thursday night you can make a bracha on B'dikas Chametz. Now it says in Shulchan Aruch that you could do really your whole house a few days earlier. Let's say you want to do it Monday night. The house is Pesach Dik. You want to do B'dikas Chametz Monday night? You could. No bracha. As long as you leave over one room to do Thursday night properly, because then you want to make the bracha. You don't want to take away the bracha. But I'll give you another example. It's later. Let's say you want to make your kitchen. I mentioned this and people are shocked, but it's such simple logic. Let's say you want to make your house Pesach Dik Sunday. Before Pesach, a week before Pesach. Now you're gonna start cooking in your kitchen. You kasher the kitchen's now you're gonna start cooking on Sunday, yeah? When are you gonna do B'dikas Chametz? The next Thursday night after you're already cooking for Pesach? That doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just a contradiction of things. So therefore, halachically, if you're planning to make your kitchen Monday, Pesach Dik, Sunday night, you have to do B'dikas Chametz in the kitchen without a bracha. Because how can you start cooking before you do B'dikas Chametz? You have a chiv to do B'dikas Chametz. Now you're cooking Pesach Dik food. You didn't even do B'dikas Chametz yet. Unless if you want to rely on the fact that you cleaned it, but then it says in halacha, you're still supposed to do B'dikas Chametz. Machat shin is a ma'aseh ma'amech be'eva ma'im, k'em sh'ala agav teira b'chanam nekashem et